Y'all, I can't believe I just almost left my money at Wendy's. $40. $40 almost left at Wendy's. But today we're doing a slightly different type of video. We're doing this kind of more vlog style because I am running some errands, but I also wanted the opportunity to show you guys I also wanted the opportunity to definitely show you guys some things from a different perspective. Today's video is all about the cell, what the cell does, the major parts of the cell, and how the cell operates. And I figured that the easiest way to show you guys how the cell operates is to relate the parts of the cell to different things that you see in your city every single day. So with that being said, before we hop into it, make sure you go ahead and like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that post notification bell so you never miss an upload. Make sure, and then go ahead and make sure that that you share the video with your friends so they can go ahead and spill some tea with us. I do have my sage, but because I'm in the car, I can't really burn it. But we're gonna take a couple of seconds. I'm putting some good music. We're gonna take 3 just mindful breaths, just resetting our minds and getting ourselves together. So let's get it. Academically prepared and ready to hop into this concept, let's go ahead and get this kettle hot. So like I said, in today's video we're going to be covering all the things that we're doing, all the parts of the cell. So this is just a general overview video on what these parts of the cell are, what the different organelles are, and how they operate. So the first organelle that we are going to talk about today is the nucleus. So the nucleus is the most important part of the cell. With transparency, I don't know any other part that would be more important than it. If somebody else considers another part more important, I mean maybe the mitochondria, but it's really the nucleus, because the nucleus is where all the instructions are. It's where all the decisions are being made. It's where the tea is being spilled, sis. So the best example I can give you of the nucleus is kind of being in the downtown area, and more specifically than being in the downtown area, being at City Hall. So at City Hall and in the different offices related to the city is where you'll find like the mayor, the chief financial advisor, the mayor's assistants, and whoever else, or even to take it to larger scale, if you were talking about your state and you were looking at the capital of your state, the nucleus would kind of also be equivalent to the capital of your state, where the governor lives and where the lieutenant governor lives, and all, where basically the location in the city or in the cell where all the decisions are made. And I'm actually driving past all of Greenville downtown right now, and City Hall is right up in that area. I'm just not going super close to it, but so I can't really show it to y'all. But so these are where all of the city buildings are, where all those administration buildings are, and where all of the decisions for the city are being made. Because even when you think about it, the big city decisions, if they aren't being made by the mayor themselves, or by the mayor themselves, then it's typically by somebody in a large business that the mayor works with, or it's, church people in the church organizations and stuff like that. They lean on their constituents a lot to make decisions on what's going on. And that's kind of how the nucleus works in the cell, based upon the environment that the cell that the other parts of the cell are dealing with, or based on the environment that it's in, based upon where it is and what's going on. The cell the DNA is going to then respond so that you can make whatever molecules you need to make, tell whatever piece of the cell to do whatever it needs to do to make sure that you're operating in the best way possible. So when you think of the nucleus, think of the command center, the place where all the decisions are made, and the place where you can get anything done that you need. Well, you can get all the questions answered that you need to get answered. So in the cell, when we talk about the nucleus, this is the home of the DNA. The DNA is basically the meat and butter, the instructions, and all of the things that are related, that tell us what's going on. If you have no idea what the DNA does, make sure you check out my video up above. I'll link it up in the cards. So that is the first part of the cell that we're going to cover. The second part of the cell that we're going to cover, because I'm driving around and I'm not really at the location and I want to be at to show you some of the other parts of the cell, we're going to talk about what I'm driving on, the infrastructure, which is basically the cytoskeleton of the cell. So when you think of infrastructure, and I'm talking about physical infrastructure, we're talking about roads, we're talking about bridges, we're talking about dams, we're talking about, you know, all the things that the city and the state physically put money into. They build up to make sure that the city is functioning for people and that everybody has what they need and that everybody can also get to where they need to get to. So when I think of the physical infrastructure, like roads and stuff, it reminds me a lot of the cytoskeleton in the cell, which is that second piece that we're talking about. The cytoskeleton of the cell is basically how the different molecules travel, how you might get a vesicle that's carrying hormones that were made by one of the other parts of the cell that we'll get to momentarily. And those proteins that are made are put into basically a little baggie to carry them, called a vesicle. And the protein that's carrying this little baggie is going to walk across the cytoskeleton the same way that I will get up. And when I want to go somewhere, I will get up. I'm like the little baggie, and I hop in my car, which is like the protein, and those proteins are called Kainin, and if that's wrong, I'll put them right here. But I'm pretty sure that's what they're called. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I know that one starts with a D and the other starts with a K. But they are the proteins that walk across this cytoskeleton with the different vesicles that contain the different hormones. So that be the equivalent of the cytoskeleton is like the roads that I'm driving on right now. Yeah, this car is like the protein that's carrying me. And I'm like the little baggie that has all the stuff that needs to get from point A to point B. Okay? So that's a really good way that you can think of the cytoskeleton and those proteins that are walking across it just being transport vessels for the vesicle to get to where it needs to go. That's simply all it does. And then the other thing that we can talk about right now, since it's pretty much everywhere, is the cytoplasm. So when you look at a cell, the cytoplasm is all of the gel-like substance that's holding all the organelles in place and basically making it so that the organelles don't really shift too much out of location when they don't need to. Like when they need to move, they can move, but they're not going to move a ton. And when they don't need to move, they won't move that much. So the cytoplasm plays a huge role in just location of the cells and anchoring in those types of things. So when I think of cytoplasm and I'm trying to relate to something that we have going on in everyday life, I kind of really just think of the atmosphere. The atmosphere is probably the most relatable thing to the cytoplasm, or gravity, the idea of gravity, because gravity is what holds us in place. Though we can move, we don't, lift from the ground because gravity is holding us down type thing. And that's kind of similar to what the cytoplasm is doing for those organelles. So you can kind of think of the cytoplasm as almost kind of like the atmosphere, or like your gravity, or the air, whatever you want to call it. It's what's around us, holding us together, the environment that's surrounding us and kind of keeping us in place. It's kind of all-encompassing of those things, because it's honestly just cytoplasm is everything that's not in the cell that's not an organelle. The same way that air is everything around us that's not an organelle. So yeah, those are the major ones that I wanted to talk about before I get to where I'm going. So I'm going to eat at Wendys. What I think. Yeah, well, it's lunchtime. It's 10:44. Yeah, I'm still gonna eat at Wendys. I can get some chicken nuggets. Or 4 for $4. Yeah, I might do that. But yeah, so when I'm thinking about eating at Wendys, it just reminded me of that the last few parts of the cell that I need to talk about. So when I think about generally restaurants, but because I'm going to Wendys, I'll use Wendys as my example. Wendys is a restaurant that gets food from probably not a variety of places, but sells a variety of options in their food. So where they get that food from, though, is what kind of we're hitting on the most in this particular scenario. So there are really like two places that the food's really gonna go before Wendys would get the food, and those are the two locations that we're gonna talk about the most to give you an idea of kind of how the rest of the cell works. So when you're walking around, when you get to around my age or a little bit younger than me, and you start looking for jobs and stuff like that, especially fresh out of high school, one of the jobs that a lot of people that work in, the plant or warehouse. And the idea of these two and kind of how they differ is allows for a good groundwork for explaining the difference between ER and the Golgi. So there are two different types of ER in the body. There's smooth ER and rough ER. Your smooth ER is smooth because it doesn't have something on it that we call ribosomes. Ribosomes are on the rough ER. We'll talk about ribosomes momentarily. But generally, the ER does the job of making the protein or making the unit that the body needs to do its thing. It's making proteins. Well, it's the location where the protein is made, is what I would say. It's not the thing that actually makes the protein, but it's the location where the protein is made. What actually makes the protein is the ribosomes. So that's why the ribosomes are on the ER, because the ER is the location, the ribosomes are what make it. So when we talk about, and then you also have some ribosomes that are free floating that don't necessarily have to be in that location to make the protein. So this is kind of like, so let's go backwards. So in this case, the ER is very much so just like a plant. It's the location where the stuff is being made. So in this case, I'm talking about Wendys. So this is the place where the chickens, when you see them trucks transporting them chickens, this is the location that those chickens are being taken to so that they can be made into chicken breasts and tenders and everything else we eat. That's so terrible to think of like that, but whatever. But yeah, so that transport that's happening, it does happen the same in a very similar way in the DNA, with DNA and RNA, than protein. And we'll talk about how that process works and how it related a little bit to back to this idea of the factory and the plant and all of that stuff. We'll do that once we get to the transcription, translation, content, and everything else related to Central Dogma, which will be the rest of this series. We'll have a couple more videos in the series, and we'll start to hit on replication, transcription, translation, and those types of things. But yeah, so the ribosome is what makes, so it's making the stuff. Hold up, y'all, I'm at the drive-thru. Let me order my food. Y'all, I can't believe I just almost left my money at Wendys. $40 almost left at Wendys. What's wrong with me? I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to do too much. I'm trying to do too much in too little time, so I miss. But anyways, back to the story. So like I said, the ribosomes are like the workers in the plant that are actually going through and basically killing the chickens, making all the pieces of the chicken that you need for that butchering the chicken so that we can then get it. So you can call the actual like place where the chickens are butchered, cutting them out and all that stuff. That would be more or less your ER. How this differentiates from the Golgi is because the Golgi is like the warehouse. So after the chickens have been cut up and stuff like that, to go to Wendys, and they have just the different pieces, then they're going to send that chicken off to an area or off to a different location where they're actually going to take the pieces of chicken and put them into the packs that we buy in the store and put the labels on them and everything like that. And those labels are telling the chicken where it should go. They tell us as the workers where we should send the chicken, what stores it should go to, all that stuff. It's putting the packaging and letting us know where it needs to go. It's providing the labels. And that's what the Golgi does. The Golgi puts a tag on that protein that was made in the ER to tell the ER where to go. It's telling them, hey, you need to go to the kidney. Hey, you need to go to the liver. Hey, you need to go to the mitochondria that's right here in my cell, but you need to go to the mitochondria that's over there at that cell. That's basically just not necessarily exactly what the Golgi might be saying, but those are just examples of things that the Golgi could be doing. But it's just putting a tag on it so it knows where to go. Once it knows where to go, it's put onto one of those traveling proteins that I talked about earlier, that while on the cytoskeleton, which is basically the equivalent of a truck coming and picking up said stuff and transporting it to the location that it has to go to. Same concept. Very, 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 very similar. It's pretty much that's why I like to think of it like that. Kind of think of it as the progression that we have for pretty much every piece of material that we have going on. It typically makes its way from a plant, or from a mill or something like that, and then makes so that it can be originally made. Then makes its way to a warehouse so it can be packaged and labeled. And then from that warehouse, it goes to wherever it needs to go. In a truck or a plane or something like that is typically taking it there. And they travel by way of the cytoskeleton. Especially if it's a truck, it's traveling by way of the physical infrastructure, which is the roads. Right, so I have one more place that I need to go over. And it is the mitochondria, or what people call the quote-unquote powerhouse of the cell. Probably been hearing that one since middle school, probably. The powerhouse of the cell. So, the best way, it's a long warm in here. Which, I mean, it's cool, because I don't know nobody here. But when I think about that is a good reason, or a good way for me to talk about what I'm talking about. So, thermostat. We all know what a thermostat is. I got child. About to show y'all the mess. Never mind. I mean, still a mess, but keep in mind we moving, so just ignore this. But microwave, stove, all of these things work by way of power. And that is the last piece we're going to talk about. Because we have this little lovely thing in here called the power box, right? Right? So, that is the basis for what the mitochondria does. This power box is basically what you can think of when you think of the end result of the mitochondria. So let me explain. So the mitochondria, I like to think of as the power plant of the cell. It's the place that provides all of the energy for you to be able to do what you do in your house. It's the place that provides you with your electricity, basically, is what I like to think of when I think of the mitochondria. So Think of it as the location where Duke Energy is operating and pumping out all that electricity so that we can get it so our homes will operate. And that is basically what the mitochondria does. The mitochondria is providing all of the energy for our bodies to function. It's providing all of the ATP, well, not all of it, but a great majority of the ATP that we need is being produced in the mitochondria. And then it's being sent to various locations in the body so that we can utilize it. And we'll have the energy so that we can move. And we typically get that energy because we'll consume a carb or something, or a fat or something. We'll eat something, and then it's eventually broken down in the mitochondria into ATP. So that's the equivalent of you paying your bill to Duke Energy, and Duke Energy doing whatever they do and they plants and stuff like that to make all of the energy and to have all the electricity be made. And then they have whatever systems they have to pump it out so that we can have a thermostat that operates. We can have that power box that was just in that room. We can have our oven and microwave that works. They distribute all the power that they then are able to produce in their plants. So that's how you can kind of think of the mitochondria. The mitochondria has all this stuff inside of it to allow for it to make the plant, make the energy that it makes. Which we can go over the mitochondria and how it functions in more detail. If y'all are interested in that, drop a comment down below so I can go ahead and start prepping and doing a video for that. But the mitochondria is going to make all that ATP and then distribute it. The same way that a Duke Energy power plant would make all of the electricity or make all of the energy and then distribute it to the different homes via whatever computer systems and power lines and all those different types of things that we utilize to get power to our homes. So I hope that makes sense so that you have a good idea of what the mitochondria does, and generally a good idea of what all the major organelles do. We do have some other ones like peroxisomes and lysosomes that I kind of think of as being like the trash men of the cell, and the recycling people of the cell, because they break down the things in the cell that we don't need, like organelles that were made incorrectly or something like that. The lysosome will take it, break it down, and then utilize it to make something else. So that's basically what I think of with the recycling man. It's like how in recycling you put a cardboard box into recycling. Like I got one over here in my mess. Put that cardboard box in recycling and it can be used for something else. You know? So that's one of the things. And then peroxisomes break down hydrogen peroxide, hence why it's called a peroxisome. So, there's just other things. There are things in the body that are also breaking things down and getting rid of the waste just as well as it is building things like the ER and the Golgi are. So those are some of the major organelles I wanted to make sure I hit in the major pieces of the cell. I wanted to make sure I hit because they're going to play a role with the biomolecules that we talked about before. So if you don't know what the biomolecules is, again, like I said, make sure you check out that biomolecules video that I'll be linking up in the cards. So about like the cell membrane, which I didn't talk about in this video already, but the cell membrane is basically like the gate holding everything together, holding everything in. It's keeping things from coming in and stuff from coming out. So it'd be the equivalent of like me, for instance, I live in a gated community. So I have to hit a button for the gate to open and close to let me in. So that would be the equivalent of if the whole city was gated, your cell membrane is gated in. So yeah, that's pretty much all the parts that I can think of that are important for you to make sure you know, especially for your general biology classes and other coursework that you'll be talking about throughout your biology career. So if this video was helpful, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoyed like this kind of more vlog style video, make sure you let me know in the comments down below what that organelle that you would like for me to cover in more detail. So make sure, again, like I said in the beginning, make sure you like the video, make sure you comment down below, make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you hit that post notification bell, and make sure you are sharing this with your friends so we can build a nice little community that we can spill some good old biology tea. I hope your spirits are clear, and I hope your heart is sound. I hope your day is filled with abundance. I'll see you in the next one, and like I said, we out. Peace.